is this just fantasy or is this Red Nails 2? Even more Red Nails. Just kidding. This is Red Nails. This is what I'm going to call the second visual adaptation of the classic Robert E. Howard story. So this is my part two. We're covering the second comic adaptation of this. This was almost the third visual adaptation of it because there was an attempt in the early 2000s to make an animated feature of Red Nails. I'm not sure how far that got, but it was going to be kind of in the vein of the original heavy metal animated film. So kind of more hardcore adult audience kind of stuff because you'd have to because it's Conan. But that didn't happen. So this ended up being the second one. So big shoes to fill because we have already covered the Barry Windsor Smith adaptation with Roy Thomas. So, and most people I would say know about this one, or when they say Red Nails, and they're not referring to the short story, they're referring to this version, but maybe not this copy. Although I will say, if you want your own copy of Red Nails, this one is fine. It's just the color's not as great as the Barry Windsor Smith colors. Anyway, this is by Ablaze, who I'm not sure about how the rights work. I'm assuming that Conan is I'm not even sure if he's considered public domain or not. I just know that this came out in 2019 and it was during the time when Marvel had the rights to Conan the Barbarian again and they were publishing Conan comics. Well, I'll cover at some point some of those because I think there were some really cool things happening there. But this was, yeah, at that time, and they were specifically marketing it as like, oh, this is the uncensored version of it. And also, funnily enough, the title was always The Cimmerian and then some story. And it seemed like they were specifically doing adaptations of pre-existing stories of like Robert E. Howard stories, and maybe that was the deal, is they weren't coming up with new stories for Conan the Barbarian, they were just adapting existing Robert E. Howard stories. And also I'm guessing that they couldn't put Conan in the title because Marvel had it, like I said. So this is split up into two issues and they are by it's either like French or Belgian creative team. So here we have Regis, Hautiere, Olivier, Vatine is to me the star of the show. I really am looking forward to sharing this art with you guys. And then Didier, Cassegrain. And apologize for my pronunciations, but that is because I'm American. So we're going to cover both of these issues and see. And if you watch the last video, you're going to see some repetition because it is the same story. It's just readapted. Regis Hautiere readapted this. And honestly, I really think they made some I think smart choices with how to adapt it and make it a modern read, because there is some of that classic kind of Roy Thomas style keeping that native text from Conan from Robert E. Howard, but they also dispense with a lot of it and just let Olivier Vatine adapt it. And this is also different because the last one, it was originally created in black and white and then colorized, and this is created with color in mind. And so right away, we're in a beautiful looking jungle, and this is Valeria's horse. And normally we see her like leading it to drink, and then she kind of goes off and explores the area, and then is surprised to meet Conan. And yeah, she climbs that cliff and sees the skeleton and everything. But here we're telling the story from Conan's perspective, you could say, and it's him coming upon her horse. And I don't know. I think that especially if you're drawing a horse, that's a killer looking horse. Honestly, it's stylized like everything is, but it fits the style. And so here we have Conan, and we're gonna get our first real good look of him pretty soon. I think it's an interesting choice because here he's got he doesn't have his trademark fur diaper. Instead, he's got proper pants, and you gotta make the design of it different somehow. And here we're getting a bit of that kind of text, just kind of setting us up for what we're going to see. And we see that skeleton at the top, and then here we meet Valeria, and Valeria's, like I pointed out last time, like the little shorts that she's wearing, the kind of outfit that Barry Windsor Smith gives her is pretty close to what is described in the short story. And so this is definitely a more, I don't know, traditional, like barbarian garb look for Valeria. But I really love the stylization of the figures. There is usually a really sharp articulation of like cheekbones, and yeah, I just think that Olivier Vatine is an amazing, amazing artist. And I really just love the look of it. And I'm praising this because I feel like, well, one, I genuinely really like his art, and I have other works of his specifically based upon finding this and wanting to and read it. And also, but I'm also making a point of praising it, especially early on, is because this looms very large for most people as far as like Conan adaptation, as far as just, it's a masterpiece and everything. And I'm not saying it isn't. It is a masterpiece. And it's some amazing work by Barry Windsor Smith. But I feel like because people love this so much, they may not give other things a chance. And so I just want to make sure that, I make it clear, like, this definitely has its chance in my book. Also, I like this little kind of skull-looking thing on his loincloth there. But here we get our text dump, you could say, where we set up who the characters are, what they're doing here, and with this tasteful shot here, we get a sense of why Conan decided he wanted to follow her. But she's not having it, and then we get our first inclination, of the dragon. And so here's another place. And also I love that we get some breathing room here with some of these quiet panels. We're sneaking along, and here we see the dinosaur slash dragon eating one of their horses. But here they make, I think, a choice that many artists since the original and since Barry Windsor Smith have made, which is they change the dinosaur from a stegosaurus, which is a non-carnivorous dinosaur, to one that looks at least more like a theropod, or at least a carnivorous dinosaur. And they put in this case they put the spines on the head, which I think that's a crazy look, and I kind of love it. And but yeah, they make it a carnivorous dinosaur. And also, I love Conan smacking this thing on the face. And it turns around, but he doesn't cut it. There's no blood there. And so they have to ascend quickly. And yeah, it's just really, I think, little illustrated moments in action. There's some great expression from the characters. And here, they go to the top of this hill. They're stuck up there. We find that poison fruit. And rather than Conan forcing her to sit on his lap, he just pops a squat, and they're like, we're about to, we're gonna be stuck up here unless we think of something to do or someplace to go. And they're like, a stone city this far south, and this is where we get our first look at it. And I love this atmospheric shot. There's so much forest in between here and there. And then, these cool little stone bits. And, and Robert E. Howard describes that, there's these, kind of old, irrigation ditches and aqueducts and stuff like that. And so he's already putting those in here. And, yeah, there's these, little, stone pillars leading up to it. And it sort of vaguely looks like a pyramid or pyramidal shape, and I like that, and that factors into a choice that happens later on. But yeah, so they come up with a plan. He's gonna borrow her knife, poison tip the knife with the poison fruit. And he's going to try to stab this thing in the mouth. Yeah, it's a cool design of this thing. It's both, it's definitely inspired by a couple different kinds of dinosaur, but it's not one in particular. And I'm fine with that because, hey, the fossil record's incomplete, right? And this is a scene I don't think we hear described. I don't think we see very particularly in Barry Windsor Smith as him poisoning the apple. And what's interesting about Red Nails is because it was published in a pulp magazine, the little mini adventures in it are kind of episodic, but that's because it was broken up into separate chapters in the original publishing of it. And so they kind of want to, give you a little snoot of adventure and also entice you to keep reading. And so, yeah, it's interesting just, how much space this comic gives the dinosaur adventure before we get to the city. And then, here he starts, chiding it, or insulting it. That's something from the story, although I think the insults here are a little different than the short story. And he throws the spear in its mouth. We get a hair's breadth away. I love that. Yeah, it's a nasty looking thing. I like it. And I love this shot from inside the mouth. I'm always going to be a fan of that kind of thing. Yeah, great stuff. And also just showing you here the scale of this thing. That thing's enormous. Now it's done. And so then this thing starts going blind. And they decide to make their run for it. And just like in the other stories, the wind changes direction and they can smell them. Gosh, I love all these roots and things. I'm gonna praise the vegetation and naturalness of it right now because, in short order we're gonna lose any kind of nature shots. So we're just gonna enjoy it while we can. And so I love this shot of it tearing through the trees after them. Also here Conan doesn't scoop her up and carry her and then throw her when he needs to do the killing blow against the dinosaur. That was a weird move in the last one that I wasn't quite sure why it was happening. I guess because like he could run faster than her. I guess that's the idea. Anyway, great shot. Them running into the kind of open, barren field area. And here Conan just like takes his opportunity to turn. And and it's almost like he's potentially gonna like not necessarily sacrifice himself, but he's just like, I just want to end this. I like this like slide to a stop. And it's interesting because I pointed out that like there's a color variation of the BWS version that has a red dinosaur rather than a green one, but this one's green. But yet, I guess I don't know. Modern coloring methods kind of lets you be granularly specific, and I feel like this thing's always sticking out color wise. Yeah, and then we get a sweet move where he slides under this thing and just guts it. And that's some nice gooiness. Yeah, and then it's fucking dead. Also, with all this running around, she must have some good tape in there. I love this shot right here. That's a cool Conan shot. Yeah, gorgeous colors in it, right? So anyway, here, and it's a bit of a jump. That's one thing I will say. So like here's our last exterior shot of this building. And also I look at this little detail. Seeing like the carved faces in these pillars. You can sort of see the suggestion of it here, but definitely really see it right here. I love that. This is the last exterior shot we see before they are right up on the door. Could have used maybe an extra page in there, but I don't know. Page counts is what it is. And this is another place where, I mean, it's all different, even if the story is the same. But this is a different take on the design of this city. And I think it's something, I could be wrong, but my feeling when looking at it is that the artist, and the people, and I guess if there's anybody else who was part of designing it, really took to the, let's say, Mayan or Aztec inspired names of the city, the characters and stuff, to add that kind of design influence to not only the city but also the characters. And I love this. He breaks through the door, and then we get this kind of eerie, dark shot. And again, we get some more of that like kind of Robert E. Howard stuff. Lined with luminescent jewels. You get those glowing jewels. The eyes of prehistoric snakes. These giant pillars. And I love that it's very dark, but yet we could still see things. And we get those little bits of light coming through the top. It's really nice. But yeah, they've entered the city. We got to that part of the story. And then I love that, like, to show the passage of time, it's now sunset and they've been wandering for a while. And I like that. That's a good jump cut because this last page ended with them like, let's see what they got in here, right? Let's get a better look at this. And then we cut to this, and so it's a good way to show time change. But I also love that there's like old decrepit siege engines out here, as if this place was besieged but then left behind. And then if you look here, we get some more suggestion of the kind of Central American inspired art of this place. And I like this little chair here and everything. But basically they're not finding anything, and it looks barren, and they're like, where's the streets? Where's the open air? And it's like, maybe it's haunted. And Conan's like, I'm not too worried about demons, but some people are. Anyway, and then here she's like, I'm done looking. I'm going to take a nap. And I love this guy. Look at that. Which is a hint of what's about to show up. And then here she's woken up by voices, you know, in this quote unquote abandoned place. And now here's one thing where the Barry Windsor Smith does, I think, one better, and that's that we get a better look at the burning skull. And here she's kind of up on this upper level. She's looking down, and we see the burning figure. And in the previous version, he definitely looked like a skeleton before she kills him, and he turns back into a skeleton, a regular person after that. But here, it just kind of looks like this demonic figure, and I love the look of it. It's something where it's like I would have this is a character I wouldn't mind having in multiple scenes. And look at these crazy swords they have. Again, Central American inspired. And here, like, she leaps down and like really cuts this guy up. Look at that. That's it's a hell of a cut. And he collapses, and this guy very much, I don't know, there's a like indigenous American version like look to him. I think it's really cool. And it's very distinct. It sets them apart from Conan and Valeria. Yeah, and so he's dead. She kind of introduces herself, and this guy, the fiery skull, and I don't know, it's got that same thing where the skull can kind of inspire fear. And I love this eerie shot of the skull mask with like those still living eyes in it. That is really great, really creepy stuff. And he's like, don't look at him. And then she smashes that shit. Yeah, and all the black arts of Xotalanc will not be enough to restore it. We get a sense of a bit of the conflict. And I like that in this. So there's definitely changes to the source material, and one of those is in the previous, and also in adaptations. The previous one, he like takes her somewhere else, and then Conan meets up with them when they get ambushed. But rather than make it two separate things, they just truncate it, and so the Xotalankas show up immediately and attack. I'm talking about this definitely in reference to the last one because I was in more detail of the story for that one, specifically because it was introducing it. But if you watch that previous video, which I do recommend you do, this will all make a lot more sense because I'm being less granular with how it's done. But yeah, I don't know. I really, from a character design perspective, I really love the design of all these characters. They're crazy swords that look like they would mess you up, and also how he distinguishes the like one group from another, like just like how their like body paint or tattoos are differing, and she totally chops this dude's head off. But yeah, like I said, there's this interesting and like I think really great articulation of like cheekbones and stuff, and also because he looks so skinny. They all look so skinny. It's like, oh yeah, there's they're not gonna have excess of food here in this city where they only grow weird fruits. Yeah. So we get some good fight choreography here. Because yeah, this battle wasn't shown in so much detail in the last one. So yeah, we get him strangling. So yeah, there's actual kind of like a landscape of each, or a landscape of this fight where, you know, where certain people are relative to others matters rather than just being kind of a mob. Because that's another way to depict a fight, is it's just like you just do quick cuts of people fighting, and the like what someone's doing from one scene to the next doesn't really matter. Because like here, this guy who's been gutted, he's still crawling, and he was on top, and now he's on the bottom. And this he's getting his eyes pushed in, and then gutted guy is trying to trip her up so that this guy can kill her. And yeah, it's heavy. It's a crazy sword. Yeah, this one, I think it's all over. A sword pierces his head, and we get this great shot of it cut in half. And Conan has come, and so yeah, he didn't do much of that fight. That was all Valeria, in the end, to coddle. And yeah, I just think that this is this is a great place to end the first part, which is of course where it ends. And the other thing I'm going to note, because they just immediately get to the doors, and missing is that scene where they get to a point where they're being followed, but it's so dark you can't see anything, and then Conan swipes behind him, and he cuts into a crawler, like scaly creature that the bad guys have. And here they're just like, we're not going to do that. And that's because they're not even going to do the crawler at all, which I think is a fine edit, because I think, like I said last time, if you're not going to have him properly fight this thing and like get a good look at it, it doesn't need to be there. I mean, it's just, it adds a little, I guess, but I don't know. When you're adapting something like this, it's like, unless you want to add an extra fight where he fights this thing, I would say it's not necessary. Also, this gate looks awesome. So that's how they split it up. So this is part one. And what I think is neat also is that they put the full text of Red Nails in the back of these issues. And then the second issue has the rest of it. So that's the first whole issue. Now let's move on to part 2. So issue 2, gotta say, the Cimmerian doesn't quite have a great ring to it as much as Conan the Barbarian does. But if you're limited to just saying this, I guess that's okay. But yeah, Red Nails sells it. I like this cover a lot, although it's interesting because this event happened in the previous book, but who cares? It's a cool cover. So let's move into it. And so we get our glimpse of the inside of this community. And again, the Central American, Mayan, Aztec motifs continue. And something that I really think is interesting here is, like, we get those hint of those jewels, so we get the kind of greenish glow to it. And yeah, we get a sense, because a theme in the short story is that, like, these people, they just live for this war, and that's basically it. And I just love that these people, they're just always ready. They're just hanging here. And I also loved, just the look of this place. And what's fascinating to me is, and I'll point it out, like, I think that the design overall of this world is just spectacular. You know, we get our, like, I don't know, sex beds. I don't know what these are, but there's just lots of folks. Love the simplification of these forms. Also love how angular some of them get. It gives me strong. I mean, it's hard for me to even say Mike Mignola vibes because he's got a very distinct look. But what I mean is like that Olivier is simplifying these forms in a very pleasing way, and I really love it. And then here, of course, we get our column with the red nails in it. Nice, yeah, I love that framing. It's really great. But something that I will point out, and it's like you could say a nitpick, and I don't mean to disparage anybody, but while I love the design and look of this place, a fact that I have to point out is it's made clear both in this adaptation, in the last one, and in the short story that these people aren't from here. These people essentially invaded and killed the people who were living there before them, who also may not have been the people who built this place. So the fact that we get a synergy between how these people look and dress and everything and the Central American look of many of the design of this place, it leads you to think that, oh, they built this place. But no, they didn't. They just took over it. So it's interesting, and maybe because maybe I need to look more closely at it, and that it's seen that they are, that they just I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I really, just these sequences are really well staged. I love the like kind of feather fan, and yeah, here we get our shot of the column with the red nails. Done. Cool. Done. And yeah, and then here it is. Yeah, and in multiple shots. And then here we get our Prince Olmec with his big, great, bushy beard. And this is Tessella, our new Tessella. I love this. All of this. All of this is great. It's a I don't know. Everything's got a really cool look to it. I really love the design sense of it. I also love this little clap in there. I'm a sucker for fun little comic-y touches. And so they're like, we're gonna serve you food, and then they're like, yeah, and then he drops it that they killed a dragon on their way in, and that's important. That's not nothing to these folks, because they're like, they can't be killed. Like, we were trapped here because of it, and we get a little bit, we get a bit of the backstory of this place. And here, and this is something that is definitely in the short story, is that while everybody else is talking about other shit, Tessella is just got her eyes glued on Valeria, and they have that. While we're getting kind of more exposition as to the nature of this place, like we came here, and then Tolkemec, who was a slave in this city before we showed up, basically was like, hey, I'll help you break in, and as long as you let me kill as many people as I want to kill. And so they do, and then we get I mean, it's one of those things where when you have so much story to tell and only a certain amount of space, you kind of have to do these extended blocks of text. But I feel like they're pairing it with good imagery here. And so, yeah, this is Zotalank, and I don't know, what's the other one? All the names are Tukulti. So Tukulti and Zotalank are like the two leaders here, and then eventually it's three, including Tolkemec. And we're setting up like, hey, we live here, but we can't leave because of the dragons. Like even if you're just getting the bare minimum of like the text, like the visuals help tell this story of like, this is invasion, them killing everybody, their victory, but then also being, trapped here because of the dragons in the forest, but then betrayal over, he stole from his brother the woman he had just married. So yeah, they're brothers. They stole a woman from each other, and they started a war, and Tolkemec fought on both sides, and they walled up places, and just went on, and eventually Tolkemec was caught and tortured and left to die in the catacombs. And I love like these skull pillars, these creepy eyes in there. Only one shot of torture here, and I appreciate that because I don't know. I know that like pulp science fiction and fantasy is the basis, or was the original version of what we came to call like exploitation movies. But that's the kind of real exploitation movie part of this, it seems, is like just, the women's outfits and the torture. And I mean, that's Robert E. Howard, man. He knew what he liked. Yeah, and then I love, that they talk about these strange fruits, and like they only grow up at the upper levels of the castle. And yeah, explaining the food, because it was right around this time when I was like first reading this, because truth be told, this was the first version of the story that I read. Shocker of shockers. But yeah, I guess because Red Nails at that point, like they only had the Dark Horse like volumes of Conan available, and I guess I just never got around to reading that enough to get to Red Nails. I never read that, so this was my first foray into Red Nails, and I was like, wow, this is an interesting story. And then I read the short story, and then I read the Barry Windsor Smith version. So I'm all caught up, but this is the first version I read, and it was right around this time when I was like, how are they eating if they never leave the castle? And then Conan asked that question, and so thanks, Conan. Also another great shot of those nails. Yeah, it's a smart move because it's the name of the thing, and even if they don't talk about it all the time, at least showing it just kind of reaffirms like the amount of people that have been killed for this conflict. And so then they decide to hire them as mercenaries to finish off these folks. Here we have Conan asking his buddy about Tessella, and we get the sense that, and we learn that like she's super old and she has magic powers. But then normally after this scene, which I love this exterior shot of the castle, like the upper levels and stuff like that, I just really, I don't know, such a nice perspective. I love the moon. But usually we cut to, from that, in the story it goes to Valeria, who is trying to sleep, and then she imagines a big flower above her, and then it's one of the servants of Tessella trying to like basically dose her and knock her completely out so that they can take her and sacrifice her and all that shit. But we skip past that because again, this is a readaptation, so they kind of change things, and I'm sure Roy Thomas is, his gears are grinded at the very mention of such a thing. And what I love is that in this version they include what I think is a very fascinating little conversation between a couple of members of this group. And it's not in the Barry Windsor Smith version because they completely cut out of that one how the Xotalancs break into their side of things. And because of that, we don't get this conversation, which is between these two warriors, where one asks the other, what are we going to do with ourselves after the war is over? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, after we've killed everybody, what are we going to do? And he's like, I've lived my whole life in this war, and my life is all about hating them. And he's like, yeah, but what do we do after that? And it's this question that doesn't have an answer. But I do think it's a great little exchange, and it's a great little posit because it relates to I feel like the themes of the short story. But then he gets interrupted because he hears something behind the door, and it's this eerie magical music because, again, the other tribe, they sneak into the catacombs, and because ancient wizards built this castle, they go among their bones and find their ancient artifacts and try to use them to get an edge in the war. And so here he's possessed by this music to open the door, and it overcomes both of them. And I just love, this guy he's playing his pipes, and here we have our Zotalank warriors coming in. Yeah, real sinister. I love it. And I love this kind of eerie. It's kind of smoky, but it's also like magic, and it's the music and everything. And I just love it. So and then Conan is wakes up, and he's come to basically say, like, hey, all the bad guys are here, so we need you to fight. And then they join in this crazy fight. And this is a little bit more of that kind of mob of shots of a war rather than a mob, and rather than like specific choreography and layout to a fight. So we have our column with those nails in it, and everybody fighting, and there's just some real great brutal imagery in here. They're awesome wild swords, but people just getting slashed up, stabbed through. Everybody's going at it. Everyone. Yeah, look at this axe he's got. Tasella's kicking ass too. Yeah, this guy's already lost his head. Or at least we found his head, but he's lost his body. But yeah, this is more similar to how it's depicted in the BWS version, like this fight in particular. Like, it's got a real kind of, there's just it's a lot of little vignettes, like right here. So just like this one, has these great shots of them fighting. Here it's like, okay, we have this big over image, which like this one started as well, and then it's these kind of individual images of folks fighting, and then we have Roy Thomas's text over here, basically summing up the impact, the weight of this fight, and how important it is. And here Valeria gets the last kill, just like she does in this one too. Yeah, gosh. Yeah, all the figure work in this is great. In both versions is great. Like, they both are drawn by immense talent, amazing artists. And I think just staging. This is just a more modern staging of it, and like how comics are presented these days. And I noted that in the previous version, in the Barry Windsor Smith version, that there were at least a few times where like a scene would break into partially onto the next page, and then they would shift what the scene's mid-page, and that's not really a modern thing. You've noticed that they don't do that here. And that's because they do something that, or the way I describe it is, they treat each page kind of like a paragraph. And because if you think back to English class, each paragraph is supposed to be a complete thought, and then you move on. The next paragraph is a separate thought, or a continuation still, but it's its own separate thought. And that's how I would consider the modern way we do comic pages, is that for the most part, pages are designed as like, this is a complete thought. even if it continues on the next page, it is still like it's still complete. Anyway, they have successfully killed everybody, and they're like, we need, and they're like, how did they get in? And they're like, magic pipes. And they're like, well, we need to clear out, make sure that there's no more left on that side. Valeria said she's gonna go with them, but he's like, you have a wound on your leg. You got to take care of that first. He's like, and he sends to Coddle with Conan to go and assist Conan in his examinations. Because there's only a handful of these people left. It's pretty crazy. And I love these big structures. That's something that I really love in fantasy, is kind of like mega structures like this. Yeah. And I just love all these little... That's another thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but I absolutely do, is like all these little like jars and urns. It's like, okay, these were like sacrifices given to these gods or these ancestors or what have you for favor. And I don't know. I love little things like that. And so then Conan and Tecatl go onto the enemy side of things to see if there's anybody left. And this is in the other one where we saw the crawler, but it was just already dead. And then what's fascinating is, so we come to the room where he's like, if like this, it looks like your enemies had a more effective method of remembering their victims than red nails. And it's these jars with their heads in it. And then Tecatl's the one who says, this is my brother's head. And I really like that it's Tecatl, because he's the one we've had the most time with, the most relationship with. And then Conan accidentally steps on a bear trap. It's, again, a modern bear trap. Both the Barry Windsor-Smith version and this one have Conan stepping in a bear trap, but it's a different time than in one than another. Because, here's the room of heads. And that one. And then Conan steps in a bear trap here in like the last battle, as opposed to here where he gets kind of hung up because Tecatl he sees his own brother, and then he turns on Conan, but he doesn't want to because he owes Conan his life. But Conan's too quick for him, and he just stabs him with it. And he's like, why did you do it? And he basically is like, Olmec ordered it. But then before he dies, he gives Conan important information about what Tessella is going to be doing to try to do to Valeria. And he's like, you got to go save her. And he's like, also, there was only that one dragon left. You guys can flee the city as soon as you can, because there's nothing keeping you here anymore. So he did the right thing in the end, but I don't know. It just has a little more impact because it's his friend Tecatl, and he does give him this information after being stabbed, but it's Olmec that stabs him, and it's got the same beats and everything. It's just the context is a little different, and also I like that he's the only one with him, because otherwise Conan would just kill two other random dudes and get some of that information from them. And then I like this where we're getting a bit of that. We're actually skipping the scene entirely with the big flower, but like she's getting her leg bound, and like she talks about seeing the spirit of Tolkemec in the sewers, or not the sewers, but the crypt below, and that that's basically that's why they don't go in the sewers or in the crypt, is because they're the ones who put Tolkemec down there, and they see his vengeful ghost, not a ghost. Anyway, Olmec comes in, he starts being creepy, And what I love is that, like, he gives her a pitch, and he's like, "We'll just feast and make love for the rest of our lives." You know, wouldn't you like that? And she fucking bites his hand, and it's pretty awesome. But then he smacks the shit out of her, and he's a big dude. But then Tessella comes in, and I love that she has such a distinctive look that we just know her from the back of her head. So something that is also different here from the source material and the other adaptation is that Olmec gets taken out this point. And that's because his part in the story is basically done. And I agree with this, because in the source material and in the other adaptation, he's just like seen on this torture rack thing, which I guess is just an excuse for Robert E. Howard to be like, I came up with this torture device. And then I guess he sort of leads Conan to where Tessella's doing her spell, even though it's just the same main room where everybody else is. So yeah, his purpose is done. He was about to try to betray Tessella, but he's under her spell already, and then she just guts him. And also she's like, I'm going to replace you with Conan because he's younger and hotter than you, basically. And I'm like, that's cool. All right. So then here we have our final sacrifice scene. And I love these little creepy urns up here. And, she doesn't need clothes anymore for the rest of the thing. That's totally fine. And, Tessella here is explaining, that a priest taught her the secret of immortality because he was in love with her, but then she ended up killing him, and now she's just been living for a really long time, sucking the life out of people. And what I love is that we're getting into this, and then Tzicatl, wasn't it? Tolkemec shows up. And I love just this gross, ragged, bony dude shows up. I love his calf muscles are all fucked up. And Tolkemec comes in, and she's just like, "What? I don't believe it. How? Were you looking for something?" And then he comes out with this wand. And I also love that this wand, it looks a little more natural. It looks like a stick, because the other one, it looked like had a disco ball on the end of it. And I mean, that's a look, but I don't know. This one just seems more kind of ancient folk magic-y. And she's like, what the fuck is that? And he blasts it, and it just like disintegrates this poor lady. And yeah, and basically he has this like laser weapon, and I kind of love this. And he's just like, and he just starts lasering everybody. Valeria breaks free, and gets a knife, and then she's at the mercy of Tolkemec, and then in comes Conan. I love this articulation here. It's real creepy and gross. It's so wonderful. It's awesome. And Conan just lops his fucking head off. And I love that. It's a bit of a quick conclusion, frankly, and that's one thing that I will say that I do like about the other Red Nails, is that it takes its time with most scenes. It feels like there's more space, even if it's packed into this like roughly the same amount of pages. That's the other thing, is that there's far less panels per page on this book as opposed to this one, because like, let's just look at the same scene from this one. So here we have the start of that scene. Conan's already there, and then just the sheer volume of panels is pretty intense. And then here Tolkemec shows up. So like, he shows up on the first page in this other one, and here this is like a page and a half in, and then now he starts laser blasting, and that lasts a couple pages. So it does last more pages, but they're also packing way more panels on every page, so that further distends the time, which I find interesting. But this is a little bit more, it tells the story a little quicker. And then here she gives Conan her pitch of like, let's unite, I'll teach you the secret of immortality, and we can be young and beautiful forever. And he doesn't really get a chance to even voice a reply because Valeria just slits her throat. And that's the end of it. Damn. And so they're like, all right, well, let's get out of here. And she's like, well, are we going to steal any jewels? And he's like, they're probably cursed, which I love that. And then we get our final line like we did here. Let's go to the coast, find a ship, and show this world what plunder means. That's always the last line. And I just love, this exterior shot, the sunrise. So it seems like it happens over the course of one night is the idea. And I feel like this does it well. And that's the second comic adaptation of Red Nails. And here we have the rest of the Red Nails story in full text in here. And so there we go. 2019, Ablaze Comics, Red Nails. So I am a huge fan of this. I'm a huge fan of the other one as well, but I want to make it clear that I really love this. I really love Olivier Vatine as an artist. He's an artist that I want to try to pick up as much of his work as possible. I just really love how he draws. And as far as comparing the two adaptations, I'll do that next time. But I'm also going to talk about other kind of art related to it and just adaptation in general. But for now, I'll just say that I'm a huge fan of this. And I think this book I think it would work for a modern comic reader as opposed to the other one. Because as much as I love the Barry Windsor Smith version, I feel like if you're not used to that 1970s style of comic, it might feel a little slow. It might feel a little rigid. It might not read as breezily as this one. Not to say that reading something breezily is a bad thing. I feel like we've learned a lot about comics and about the nature, the balance of text to image in the intervening years between these two adaptations. So I feel like they're just two different ways to tell the same story. So, no segue needed. I'll just say, buy my comic Side Questers. This is the first volume. It's my fantasy adventure, and it deals with a noble warrior who has to pair up with a giant lizard man, and they do side quests, and it's fun, it's violent, it's about friendship and monsters. It's everything that I love about fantasy I put into a comic, the kind of comic I would want to read. And if you like that, or if you're interested in short stories in the same universe, I have my Haxan anthologies. I have 2 of those. There's 60 pages of short stories about magic and sorcery, and they are usually pretty dark, but they're a lot of fun. And you can find both of these on my website. You can buy. And if you want to look into something that's a little more classic comic book kind of material, then you look no further than 3-Panel Origin, where I create a character and tell their origin in 3 panels. And it's kind of got the vibe of the Tick. You know, there's corn themed superheroes as well as a guy who can teleport using porta-johns. It's got everything you'd want in a comic. And this collects the first 3 years in a physical format. And this is a book of short stories dealing with some of those crazy characters. That is my bit. And this is Red Nails.